Hi, you guys. Welcome back. My name is Carrie Penny. I am the Happy Crafty Homemaker, and welcome to part 2 of me trying to help you guys pick the right sweaters before we start knitting and crocheting them. So, first video, we talked about neckline and overall body silhouette. In this video, we're going to be talking about sleeves. And my artwork is only going to become increasingly bad over the course of this section. So this is part of why we're doing this last. So now you're very well acquainted if you watched part 1 of my inability to draw. So as we said at the introduction and at the midpoint in the previous video, when I use the word flattering, I'm not talking about trying to make yourself necessarily look skinny. We're talking about keeping in the 1/3, 2/3 proportion ratio and flattering for the shape we're trying to achieve, the look we're trying to achieve, whether we're trying to create fullness across the shoulders, across the hips, we want to create a drop line silhouette, whatever that may be. When I say flattering, I'm talking about flattering for what we're trying to create, the shape and the idea of the body line we want to create. So this isn't, we're not trying to snatch anything. We're trying to create the aesthetic that we're trying to go for and how we're going to do that in our garments. Of course, I just threw my pen because I'm that talented. If you are new here, this is not typical. Occasionally we do these crafty chat videos, but this is not typical of my channel. I am not an ace at dressing myself, so don't take anything I say as 100% gospel, but this is based on other people's research and everything else, and just things you can find out there and trying to figure out the proportions and geometry of dressing the body. We talked in the first video about the break zones, neck, bust, waist, hip to knee, knee to ankle. And you can continue to extend that line through the foot, depending on the type of shoe that you wear as well. So, this video, we're talking about sleeves, and sleeves are a big one. This is the whole thing that set off this entire video series. I did a video where I was talking about styling tops that I was drawn to this season. A couple of people asked if I would talk about kind of picking the right patterns and knowing what kind of patterns to make for your body and trying to get the look that you're trying to get, because I was talking about the styling and the look of why certain things I was drawn to and the shapes that they created that I was really drawn to, and particularly a lot of the cropped shrug cardigan style things. Just because I'm in my maxi dress era. That became a topic of conversation. So sleeves are actually a huge part of this, and wanting to explain sleeve shapes and the trick that shaping plays on the eyes. And all of these, I think we're going to talk about set-in, raglan, drop shoulder, dolman or batwing, puff, bishop, balloon, mutton, and circular yoke, which is kind of also plays into the raglan a little bit, but different at the same time. So all of these are going to create different shapes in the height and width of the shoulder harness area primarily, although we can fold certain different designs across the bust line as well. So I would definitely recommend going ahead and grabbing yourself a cup of coffee or some nice ice water. And we are going to crack on. First off, we have set-in seam. So this is your sewn seam. And that line is created right here. So I probably should have put a little collar on our makeshift sweater guy here. But that set-in line is going to be right here. It can obviously be a little bit further out from the neckline. It can be a little bit further in, but this is the zone we are talking about right here. A set-in sleeve comes in a couple of different shapes. You can have it where it is going into an insert in your sweater that's squared. I do prefer the ones that are rounded or have, there's kind of like a little bottlenecky kind of shaped versions. So you'll frequently see the diagram where it shows your sweater when the front and back has been sewn together at the shoulder seam and you inserting the sleeve into that. There are patterns that will create a fake line here, not raglan, but a fake set-in line to create that illusion as well. And when we're crocheting sweaters, a lot of times instead of sewing these on, we may crochet these directly in as we go. But the big thing for the purpose of this video is not the construction itself, but the line that it creates. So we are creating that line from the top of the shoulder to the underarm, wherever that happens to lie, depending on the type of upper part of the shoulder we have. So this is the most universally flattering shape. This looks good on all necklines. This looks good on all body shapes for the most part. This does not create or add bulk or distance necessarily. It actually reduces bulk visually in the bust and underarm area, or for men, the upper chest area. This is a very functional design for a sweater as well. So if you're like me, where you always question a lot of round yoke designs because you raise your arms up and all of a sudden what was at your hips is now up over your boobs, this does not do that. This construction does not do this. This more or less stays in place and stays where it's supposed to be. It moves with your body, not off your body when you do things like raise your arms. It's very easy to alter a lot of the sweaters that are sleeve sets this way. From here, we can, obviously once we're done with our shoulder area here, we can add, some waist shaping here to create a little bit more of an hourglass shape. That's what I do with a lot of my longer sweaters. We can turn this obviously into, say, a cap sleeve or a short sleeve or a 3/4 length sleeve, or we can turn this out into a giant bell sleeve if we want to. The big important thing we need to be careful with is this section right here when we're picking a pattern. This is the area we want to measure to and ensure we have the measurements for this area correct. And that is different pattern designers will show this measurement in different ways, but this shoulder to underarm placement. And it's where you want your underarm to hit, not where your armpit is. You need to know what this is going to block out to and have that measurement correct. Because like I said, from here, you can change your neckline, you can change your sleeve shape, you can change the body shape. This is the most important thing you need to know coming into the construction of this garment. If you have broad shoulders like I do, this seam placement is not going to create bulk in your shoulder area. And this is going to require the least amount of positive ease for the overall garment. This is also flattering on pear shapes as well as hourglass because it's not adding or subtracting visual bulk in the seam itself. We can do everything in the body, lower sleeve, and neckline we want to do to create the shape that we want to do. This is very neutral sleeves. So if you're a pear-shaped person and you want to do something that's maybe a trapeze shape, which is an over large A-line where it's going to kick out a lot more, versus an A-line that's going to skim the bust and skim the hip and drop out. This is going to start increasing at your underarm for a trapeze. This is not affected. This won't change. And for a pear-shaped person, you can create this entire line just by adding, increasing through the hip area or from the underarm to the hip area as needed to fit you how you want your garment to fit you. So up next, we have Raglan. I make a lot of Raglan sweaters in general. Again, I like to draw attention to the neckline and elongate that neckline. I am very squat in my shape. So a lot of the things you will have seen me make, crocheted and knitted, I do tend to favor Raglan. A lot of people like it in knit construction specifically because it's super easy. It makes for a great beginner's sweater. It does with crochet as well, but a lot of people take a little bit longer to think in a round yoke construction and understanding the placement of things. So a Raglan is going to draw attention to that neckline. So we'll start off with our little basic sweater shape here. We need to go here. And our body is here. So for a Raglan, we're going to have an obvious increase line right here. So this is like your baseball tee kind of looking. Now what this can do is you're creating a visual line up again to your neck. So this can create a slopier line up to the shoulder, which can make the shoulders present a little bit more narrow. I find sometimes, depending on if I'm doing color work for a Raglan shape, you can do a pseudo Raglan, which is a sewn Raglan. There are lots of different ways to create this line. You can do this sewn, you can do this in one piece. Most people do this in one piece. Finding a flat Raglan sweater nowadays is very uncommon unless you do a lot of machine knitting or happen upon an older beginner book, which I have no issue with the sewn look. That's where you've got the capability of doing your sleeves in different colors from the body easier. You can still do it in the round. It's just easier. But you're creating this line that comes up to the neck, which can create this narrowing here. Again, this is a very relaxed feel. It's a comfortable feel. It moves with the body. There are ways to do increasing across the back to create a weighted drop to the fabric in the back. So the back stays back instead of riding to the front. You see it most commonly with round yoke construction, but a lot of Raglan are constructed very similarly to a round yoke. So you can see that occur also with this. Your diagrams frequently are going to have your neck hole, and you're going to see it. They're going to talk about their increasing here, and this is going to be sleeve 1, sleeve 2, front of work, back of work. And that's what your diagram's kind of going to look like. And obviously you'll have like, this was your neckband, and you're starting from the neckband and working your way out when you're doing it in the round. If you're sewing it, it's obviously going to be a different diagram there. This is great for an hourglass shape. It highlights the bust and shoulders. And again, once you are through this section here, you can do whatever you want in the rest of the garment. So if you want to change your sleeve length, change your body shape, anything else, you can do that. Again, I tend to add a little waist shaping just to create a little where my natural waist is. If you have a wider lower half, this is also something that can draw the eye upward, because from the cuff up, you're creating this type of motion. The line of the garment itself is moving in an upward direction. So regardless of how you shape your body, if you have a wider lower half that you want to diminish or create a little bit more balance, this can give you a little bit more of that visual balance. It's not a straight neutral style, like I said, in sleeve, but I would say this is your second closest to being a super neutral shape, where it works across all body shapes and all proportions. So whether you are top heavy, bottom heavy, hourglass, straight shaped, this is a shape in the upper body that's going to work for everybody, because again, we're creating that dimension and line through here. In a raglan, you can still have a V-neck, not commonly designed, but still exist out there. One thing that can also dramatically create a shift, especially if you're knitting for a man, I've noticed, is you have the difference in the angle of where your placement is for your sleeves. So the general shape is underarm to collar, but you have some that will do their increases way up here, which I think creates more of a narrowing of this part, this dimension of your shoulder. Or you can have something that comes way in on your neckline. And this, it doesn't add breadth here, but it makes the outer part of the shoulder, I think, more noticeable. And it's not just the shoulder, it's because you're drawing that line through here. So if you do want to create a wider shoulder, I've noticed a lot of men's sweaters, especially those that are designed by men for men, tend to have a steeper angle from the underarm to the collar versus a shallower angle, which I see more commonly in female designs, designed to suit the female shape. Also, when you look at store-bought purchased higher end sweaters, so like Ralph Lauren or higher, you will notice a lot of those have that steeper curve for the men's sweaters in particular. And it's because most men are trying to create a triangle body shape in the ideal shape of a man's body. They want to be broader across the top and narrower through the hip. So this creates a little bit more of a breadth while maintaining that cut, whereas cutting a little bit wider from the neck to the shoulder doesn't add as much visual distinction to this area. So most of us are women dressing women and designing for women. We're going to see this more commonly. But if we are knitting for the men in our life or tailoring a men's pattern to fit ourselves because we want the boyfriend fit, be aware of the difference in the grade for the raglan cut here. Not doing so bad, but we're only 2 in. I am going to go ahead and skip ahead to the circular yoke because I think that makes more sense to talk about that up against the raglan because they are very similar to each other. So for a circular yoke, this is kind of the kind of thing you see with like the Fair Isle patterns, the ski sweaters, crocheted and knitted. These do tend to be designed as circular yoke sweaters. So we've got our little neckline here. And then we got our shoulder. Body, sleeve. All right. So when we are creating this sweater, we are working our piece along this line. So we're creating a downward line in the front, and we're creating this slope from the front here. So when you're looking at how the pattern runs, it's going to arc and slope into the shoulder and arm area. A lot of times if you've got a ski sweater, you will see the pattern on the sleeve, the upper and there, and then this will be like a solid color worked down. We also see this a lot of times with lace patterns. And a thing to know about this, I love a circular yoke sweater. It is not my most flattering shape, shall we say. It slopes the shoulders. It's easy to add texture, pattern, color work. Like I said, thinking of like things like the ski sweater, it's Raglan-esque in the construction and how we kind of think of the overall shape here. It has a very, very familiar fit. A lot of us have had something like those ski sweaters, but because we have that directional shift, the sweater is going to pull down the front and arcing towards the sleeves here. This is also where we almost always want, for busty women in particular, we want to see the sweater have increases across the back to pull it down in the back and prevent it from riding over our shoulders. I find being busty, a lot of things want to ride up my bust and straight off my body this way. I don't know why that happens. I don't understand the mechanics or the physics of clothing wear at that point, but this is where frequently we're going to see some form of increasing here to create bulk and extra fabric to the back. But the back and the front visually look very similar. Let's see, super easy to make the fit. When you're fitting this, you are working out in a single piece to where you want to break for your underarm. So it's very easy to try this on. You'll lift up under your arm and kind of pinch it to see if it's hitting, you know, down the underarm area where you want it to fit, because you're just kind of basically putting it on as a cape until you hit the zone here that you want. This can be a little bit harder if you're bust and back or at a larger ratio to the arms. Once again, this can be fixed with those short rows in the back as well, which is probably why, as a busty woman, things tend to ride back on me so significantly. If I have a very strong, broad shoulder plane, so if you were built like me, this is going to give you a shape you're kind of confused by, because it is going to create that soft, delicate curve. And it's going to feel very droopy, curved, compared to our don't need shoulder pads because we came pre-built with them. We can wear an 80s suit, take the shoulder pads out, and still have the same silhouette. So this is a very different shape on us than what we generally are used to seeing. If you are particularly broad, I do think this is nice to kind of create a slope into the waist area though. So this is not a you can't wear this if. This is just understand how the shape is going to play, and do look for those increasings or short rows across the back to keep your sweater in place. Now, this is also a shape that as you raise your arms, you're going to get the bottom of the sweater is going to shift a lot more, because as you do this, you're moving the entire top part of your sweater and drawing it up as well. So that's going to cause the bottom of it to ride up. So if you see like the pictures where somebody's doing like this and all of a sudden like their entire side is exposed, they don't mean to be, but everything is exposed up the side. That's why, because this is all one piece until you break for the body and for the sleeve. So all of this underarm and everything is going to ride up with you. Now, if you work this, there is a way to work this flat and add a Gansey patch in the underarm. And you will see this as actually why those patches exist in the I think they're Welsh. Why those patterns have that design. It looks, I'm talking about the sweaters that look like they could be almost like a fisherman, but not, because it's a seed stitch pattern, not a rope pattern. Seeing this underneath the arm though, gives you the added bulk under the armpit, so your sleeve can move freely. That's why those sweaters have that. It also is a, for them, it was a fisherman type sweater, an outdoorsman sweater. So that is a frequent wear point where things would wear out. And if you have this kind of a patch in there, it made it more convenient to mend the garment, because you would just take this piece out and put a new patch in under there. So there are different ways to fix the rise issue with something like a circular yoke sweater. But it all depends on how much you want to get into those weeds. Again, I like these overall. I think these are a great shape. This is, oh, the sweater everybody's made 10 million times that I still haven't made. Japanese designer. I'll put it on screen here. Everybody keeps knitting this sweater, and I think people have a love-hate with it, specifically because it's an oversized design with this problem. And I think it's a lot of times because this is that's such an easy pattern to follow, and there are so many modifications out there. It was made to be super oversized. It wasn't meant to be a fitted sweater. I think as people have played with it, they have discovered, for them, this shape does not work with their body, and they're having to alter it to get the shape that they want. It's a very easy style of sweater to alter though, barring overworked lacing and having to rework a color work project, the pattern for a color work here. If you're just doing a basic sweater though, this is a very easy design, again, to alter, because you can choose how far you want that drop by trying it on. You know exactly what you want your drop to be. It's very easy to measure with a tape measure, the arc of this shape, so it's not hard to just do it by measure. And again, from here, you can create any body shape you want. You're not tied to any specific construction other than this area. All right. Next up, we're going to do drop shoulder. So drop shoulder is very much like a set-in shoulder. Andrea Mowry favors the drop shoulder design in a lot of her things. You will see this a lot in very boxy sweater designs, mostly. Not always, but mostly. And it is a great starting point if you have never made a sweater, because unless you seam it too tight or don't block it before you seam it, you're almost always going to be able to wear what you finish. So a lot of times the shape we're going to see for this in our design is going to look, might be easier to do this. When we're looking at the design, we're going to see something that looks like this. And generally we have a ton of positive ease in the body piece here. So when we put those arms down, the shape we're now getting puts that sleeve seam down here on the arm. Now, if you have very wide arms, this might not be the shape that looks the best on you. It is going to draw attention to the width of the arm where that seam exists. Overall, you're going to create width, partially because this almost always comes with a positive ease garment, a larger positive ease. But you are going to create width because your eye is going to be looking for that break, and that break is happening way out here on the arm. So you're going to squish your proportions just a little bit, not always a huge amount, but you are going to create a shortening of the proportion from the upper shoulder to your waist break, because that line is going to be so far down here. You're going to create a squish here, which means that the shortening is going to affect the entire area there. Decreases the focus to the bust and adds it out to the arms and shoulders. So if you are very lean looking or narrow through your shoulder area, or you're not buxom, this is going to add a little element of fullness and visual width across the front plane of this garment. It's going to give you that visual width. This works best with drapey fabrics, which is why so frequently these are going to have tons of positive ease. Generally, you're going to have a droop here in the armpit area. And when you hold your arms out, your garment's going to fall off your arm from out here. Generally, that's how these things are designed. Again, not always, generally. And I am specifically thinking a lot of Andrea Mowry's designs for sweaters tend to be like that, hence the boxy sweater design. Yep. So this is a relaxed shape, boxy, more shapeless. If you do have a larger bust line, one of the advantages to this is this tends to be a flowier, lighter, drapier fabric. So you can create a nice line from the bust line down on the body in this shape, but you are going to have a different shape up here. Visually creates a slope because you're looking for that seam. So the eye is going to kind of round that shoulder out, which will create a little bit more, because you're coming so far out, it's going to create that width as the eye is trying to find that seam. Generally loose, great if you fit the bottom. If you bring the bottom in, you can get like some really nice effects. This also will play into how we look at the dolman and the batwing design as well. Looks great with an open neck, round or V, that can also offset some of this bulk. So if we come in with a, well, we're emptying this area. This is where our collar would be. So we can offset some of that bulk. And you can actually see it just where I drew that. You can offset some of that bulk by dropping the neckline. And I do think this is an opportunity where we can bring that neckline in a little bit deeper to match the depth and create that kind of a line visually. So we're bringing all of this down to the same level of where that sleeve is. And now that doesn't mean you can't put like a shell or something underneath it for modesty's sake. You don't have to, obviously have a V-neck that goes down to your belly button or something and have everything exposed wide open. But this kind of a shape will offset some of this. And the deeper you go with this neckline, the more it's going to offset the width that this is going to create. And I think a loose V-neck can get, because it's going to drape off the bust and drop down to the hips, and it's going to give you a skirting effect. I just think it's a very lovely look if this is what we're going to do. And I think that tends to work very well on anybody who tends to be very broad across the shoulder and bust area. Now, if you are more narrow, I would keep that neckline a little bit higher. I would not go for a full V-neck, because when you have that higher neckline, you don't even have to go with a full boat, just a soft round neckline up there. You can see where we've created just a little bit of visual line bulk out here. And that's not even using a good drawing. That's just my sad little attempt at having something to show you what I'm talking about. In this design, your most important measurements to understand how they're going to play with the garment is actually your bicep at the widest spot. You want to make sure that as your sleeve rides up and down the bicep area, this seam can easily ride up and down the bicep area. So you need to know your bicep at its widest point and your bust measurement to ensure that your width is going to be correct. You can also take into account the overall width of what you're working with from your shoulder point to your bust to that bicep as well. But this is the area, kind of this on both sides is the area you're going to be most concerned with. You're going to need to know that bust, the bicep, and you're kind of going to want to be aware of what this ratio in this triangle is as well, in order to get a well-fitted drop shoulder. Again, this is very good with that very oversized shape as well that we were talking about, where I said, you know, when it comes to oversized, it's very hard to pick just like one, because oversized you can oversize things in different parts of the body to create different points of draw for the eye. Another way to think about this is when I'm talking about the eye fall, if you've ever quilted or watched quilting shows, they talk about needing places for your eye to rest and how your eye travels across a quilt, and you need those resting spots and the busy spots to contrast each other, because if it's all busy and all fancy stuff and all fancy colors, then your eye gets kind of tired of looking at your quilt. But if you have those resting spots, we're talking about the busy spots. We're talking about where we're trying to draw the eye to. In this entire 2-video situation, we're talking about how we're trying to draw our eye to certain places. And when we're knitting, you know, and crocheting and understanding where these things are going to hit, as we're looking at the pattern, looking at other people's designs, looking at the pictures, we better understand how that's going to look on us. So we're not wasting our time making things that are not the shape we're trying to go for. Dolman or batwing. I hate these. Collar, sleeve, body. Sleeve, body. Oh, that's way lopsided, but it's probably even more of a dramatic underarm here. This is the shape where your armpit's in your waist. That's how I always feel when I wear these. To me, this is kind of like what your swanchos and things like that are kind of based on. You're adding a ton of volume here. Everything, when you wear a dolman, I mean, it can go from the waist to the elbow. The line can be from the waist to the elbow here. And all of this extra fabric is billowing around that bust line. This will add, I mean, just you're going to have all this extra fabric that billows through here. I mean, this is all extra fabric all the way down. And you're going to create a draping of all that extra fabric through there. Now, one of the reasons why I love this is a lot of times you will have this shape and then all of a sudden it will swoop in real sharp, and then you will have a band down here. And this can really draw that attention down into the waistline area. And, you know, you can make everything kind of drop then again from there. If you are very narrow through your hips, I think a dolman can be very attractive if you are not as full in the chest and don't have quite as full hips. Creating this roundness here when you snatch in at wherever that snatching point is, wherever that sharp decrease occurs to the body of the sweater, when it falls, the next line falls directly under that, I actually think it creates a little bit more of an illusion right there towards where we're trying to create hip volume. Personally, I think it is a very attractive shape, but if you're an apple shape or an extreme hourglass shape, you have to be very careful about getting this fit correct. And it can be very difficult. If you have very large arms, though, this is wonderful because you can obscure a wide upper arm in this huge triangle of fabric that runs from your elbow to the waistline. So you don't have anything fitted to your arm up here. You can have free open movement up there. It's a very comfortable fit, but trying to aesthetically get the right shape is very difficult based on your body shape. I would definitely spend some time with a store-bought dolman and what you like and don't like about it before I attempted to knit or crochet a dolman pattern. Also, like I said, a lot of people really love the swanchos where you're creating a poncho with sleeves. This is that same shape. That is the exact same shape, except you have, instead of coming in for a standard sweater, it maintains that poncho shape through the body. But it's very difficult to get fitted correctly, and trying to get the proportions right for your body can be a royal pain in the rear end. But it can be such a win. It really can be such a win. And if you love that like skinny jean, elevated sweatshirt, not sweatshirt look, this can be so chic. It can be done so well on any body shape. You just have to really figure out the direct proportions you're looking for and where you're trying to add volume. Always look for the places where you're decreasing visual volume or increasing visual volume. So I have one more sleeve to talk about, and this is the Puff Bishop Balloon or Mutton. And we will finally be done. This has turned into like almost a 2-hour combination between the two videos. I will upload both parts together in a single video, probably sometime in mid to late August on an off day, a day I don't normally upload. Forgive me. I have filmed this straight through, so I have been talking at the camera now for 2 hours. So I am starting to get a little tired in the vocal cords here. So Puff, Bishop, Balloon, and Mutton. These are all takes on, for us, the important part is the top of the shoulder. Although these do behave differently in the sleeves. All right. So we have a sweater here, and this is where we're breaking for our shoulder. So, puff sleeve, you're going to have gathering here, and it's going to puff. And then you're going to have the sleeve. That's your basic puff. A mutton runs a little bit longer. Generally, you're going to have a little bit more structure through this area. But it's going to puff and come down as well. The bishop sleeve and the balloon sleeves both fall in between the two extremes. A mutton can be huge. To be honest, they can be ginormous. Now, I do not mess with these at all on my body. At all. I have plenty of upper body bulk. The last thing I need to do is add anything. Like I said, I can wear an 80s suit without shoulder pads. I don't need assistance in this area. But if you are particularly narrow shouldered, if you have a pear shape and you really want to balance that, I highly recommend any of these types of sleeves. You don't have to have it where it rises out of the neckline so high up here, but you can also create bulk on the outer side as well. A lot of times you will see a lot of pleating. These can be done in increases, decreases. There are different ways to do this. You also have different seaming techniques. I have seen where there are some wider Raglan style tops where we've got wide to the armpit. This is very hard for me to draw because, as we've discovered, you know, I was training to be the next Da Vinci, and so you have a pseudo Raglan type design there, and you will have rapid increasing and a giant volume here. Now, these are sweaters where you will need to insert a shoulder pad. A lot of times, in order to get the actual effect you're looking for, you will need to insert a shoulder pad. There are dresses and things that are made where you can have like crinoline pads put in there. Most sweaters, you're just going to want a simple shoulder pad to maintain this volume that comes up over. So this is something that can easily, like if your shoulder, say, cut here, with that extra zhuzh over the shoulder cap there, if you just have pleating here, you can create some extra just padding there. If you really want to add drama, you could come up, out, and over where it's a set-in sleeve, where we come in with that set-in line versus the Raglan line, and come way out as well. So there are different ways of constructing this. We've already talked about the construction pros and cons of things like the Raglan versus the set-in sweater. But understanding what this shape is going to do, a lot of balloon sleeves right now are cutting straight, and then you have your arm sitting out from under like this. So a very 80s silhouette, to be honest. I'm seeing a lot of cotton casual still using this kind of a balloon sleeve. You can also see a lot of things that just have big ruffles added to, say, like maybe a cap sleeve. And that's going to give you a very similar aesthetic at that point, but it is a difference in construction. The mutton has the giant poof at the top and really narrows into a much tighter sleeve. By the time you hit the elbow, that's going to be a very tight sleeve coming down the forearm. Also was very popular in the 80s. A lot of these are throwbacks to 80s, to be honest. What we're seeing in mainstream fashion with the puff, balloon, button, all of that is very common in 80s fashion. So, this is not... I compiled this combination, but none of this stuff is just stuff that I've pulled out of my own head. This is all kind of available out there in general in different style guides, how to dress your body shape, things like that. There are different versions of that to create, like if you are into a certain style or aesthetic, like say cottagecore or something, you know, there are dressing guides that will tell you for your body shape how to get the, you know, classic cottagecore look. There are different types of understanding your, not just your body shape as it's a, you know, an hourglass apple, pear, yada, 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 but understanding like, is it a super hyper feminized body shape or is it a more athletic body shape? That you can get really into the weeds as to what styles and shapes are going to most flatter. Again, we're trying to get to a certain aesthetic, regardless of what that is for each one of us. You can get really into the weeds, and like I said at the end of the previous video, I am barely scratching the surface. I'm just trying to help you have enough information to where you can pick the pattern that's going to give you the shape that you actually want or that you are looking for in your knit and crochet sweaters. So most of this information works the exact same when it comes to sleeveless tops, short sleeve tops, long sleeve tops. Obviously, you know, your arm proportion again is another place where we're creating breaks. So you could do different sleeve lengths to create different aesthetics as well. I'm going to leave it here unless there's something specific you guys want me to talk about. Please keep in mind also, along with all of this, this is like color theory. I love color theory personally. I think color theory benefits a lot of people to create things that reflect well on their skin tone, their hair color, their eye color, things like that. I think color theory can be very, very useful for a lot of people in trying to choose a color palette for their wardrobe. But that doesn't mean there aren't outlier colors that, you know, you want to still wear. You still want to do something. You may not particularly want to create a 1/3, 2/3 proportion with your body for some reason, and that is up to you. These aren't rules that you must live by, live or die kind of things. Now, I personally will never wear a puff, bishop, or mutton sleeve. That's just never going to happen for me. I don't like the way that looks on me. But a dolman, if I can find the right dolman or batwing top, 100% I am going to wear it. I think that is, like I said, it to me can be an exceptionally chic look with the right outfit for a, you know, I want to go out and be, you know, I need to go shopping and run errands, but I want to look like I actually cared how I look today. 90% of the time I'm wearing sweatshirts and sweatpants or t-shirts and leggings. Like, I don't dress up very often. So if I have a day where I do want to dress, but I want to be casual, that's something I would definitely 100% go for. It feels like a sweatshirt, but it's elevated. It's just that next step up. It's, I look like I actually cared how I looked running out the door. Most days I don't actually care how I look running out the door. So, these aren't hard and fast, must always, you know, I'm going to look like a train wreck if I don't necessarily. And some of these things, there are outliers where, you know, you may find like the perfect, you may be a short girly that finds the perfect length tunic and you buy it in 20 different colors because it creates a perfect 2/3. It's hard to find these things. We can make these things far easier though, once we understand what it is that we're looking for. So, I hope my presentation was not overly confusing. Unfortunately, I do think it was pretty dry other than laughing at my own drawings over here. But if you have questions, I'm happy to try to answer them. I do recommend, if you're really interested in styling guides, dressing your body, things like that, I do highly recommend looking heavily into different takes on how to style things or how to create your silhouette. There's just so much more, and there's so much I can't even begin to tell you what I don't know and don't understand, because for me it's more about creating the basic shapes. I am 100% a basic idea kind of person when it comes to this, but you can get way more into it than I've even begun to broach on the subject. So anyway, I love you guys. I hope you're having a wonderful, fantastic day. As always, I look forward to seeing you real soon. Please leave your comments down below. Also, if you have any experience with anything that I said today, any thoughts, opinions, yada, yada, let us know. It does help. Again, I love my comment section, because when we have these more chatty kind of things, as new people come in or as y'all are helping each other, like, your comments are just as important as what I'm saying up here. So it can be just as useful and just as helpful for someone else. But again, none of these are hard and fast rules. None of these are must do or die anything else. These are just kind of like a loose guide to understanding how, looking at a pattern, you can tell what's going to look good on you or meet your goal of what looks good on you. So anyway, I love you. I look forward to seeing you real soon. Please take care of yourselves. Bye, guys.